Good evening, folks. I'm Congressman Pat Fallon, guest hosting tonight for Great American Greg Kelly. Tonight on Greg Kelly Reports, we're going to discuss yet another unprecedented indictment of President Trump, the peculiar timing of those indictments, and the impact they're having on the polls. And the shifts they're causing may surprise you. We're also going to explore our incredibly porous southern border and why the Biden administration seems so committed to actually fighting against securing it. But first, let's examine the Biden family business dealings. Is it historic corruption of the first order and potentially the greatest political scandal in American history, or merely a wayward son who began hustling for a few ill-begotten bucks, trading off on his daddy's name without his daddy's knowledge? This is what candidate for president Joe Biden said in 2019.
I did not know he was on the board of that company. I've never discussed my business or their business, my sons or daughters. I did my job. I never discussed a single thing with my son about anything having to do with Ukraine. No one has indicated I have. We've always kept everything separate. I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period.
Also in 2020, when Donald Trump accused Hunter Biden of taking money from the Chinese, this is what Joe Biden's response was.
My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about? China. I have not had it. The only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
So folks, let's do this. You at home are the jurors, and please be as objective as you can as I lay out the facts. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the question you need to ask yourself and then answer after hearing this evidence is this. Is it more likely than not that Joe Biden, the current president of the United States, not only had knowledge of his son's unethical, shady, and illegal business dealings, but also was an active participant in them? In legal terms, we call this standard a preponderance of the evidence. Hunter Biden failed as an adult. He was a hard drug user and frequented prostitutes, among other unsavory endeavors. But then suddenly he became a multimillionaire international businessman, dabbling primarily in the energy sector, a field which he had no prior experience whatsoever. But what accounted for the sudden turn of events for Hunter Biden? That's right, his dad became vice president of the United States. So in 2013, Joe Biden hosted business associates of his son, Mexican nationals Miguel Magnani and Miguel Velasco, at the White House, and he took a tour, and then he took pictures of them in the Brady briefing room. He also had a conference call with one of Hunter's clients, Carlos Slim, the Mexican billionaire. In 2014, Hunter brought his best friend and business partner, Devon Archer, to meet with Joe Biden. A short time later, they were both appointed to the board of Ukrainian energy giant Burisma. And Burisma paid Hunter Biden nearly $83,000 a month. Interesting, it's also, you have to note, that Devon Archer told Tucker Carlson in a recent interview, and I quote, "It is categorically false. Joe Biden had no knowledge of Hunter's businesses." So in 2014, Joe Biden had dinner with Hunter's business associates from Kazakhstan and Russia. Among them was Elena Butina, the widow of the mayor of Moscow and a wealthy oligarch in her own right. Interesting to note, Ms. Butina is not among those of Putin's inner circle who Joe Biden chose to publicly sanction after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. In 2015, Joe Biden had an additional dinner with Hunter's business associates from Ukraine and those, again, from Kazakhstan in Washington, D.C. In the same year, 2015, Viktor Shokin was hired the prosecutor general of Ukraine. His job was to root out corruption, and one of his main targets was Mykola Zlochevsky, the CEO of energy giant Burisma. Yes, that same company that is paying Hunter Biden the $1 million a year. In September 2015, the American ambassador of Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, appointed by none other than Barack Obama, gave a speech in Odessa, Ukraine, where he warned of the dangers of corruption and then singled out Mykola Zlochevsky as being one of the particular problems. In December, Burisma held a board meeting in Dubai. Zlochevsky, Devon Archer, and Hunter Biden were among those present. Now, at one point, Zlochevsky and Hunter made a phone call. That phone call was allegedly to Joe Biden. Now, this wasn't out of the ordinary, as Devin Archer testified before Congress that Hunter oftentimes would call his dad in front of his business partners and associates. So whether this call was, with his dad or not, we know what followed. A few days later, Joe Biden flies to the Ukraine and demands that the prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, be fired. It's the same prosecutor that's investigating his son's firm. In fact, Vice President Biden threatens to withhold $1 billion worth of aid from Ukraine unless Shokin is canned. But Shokin he's not going to be deterred easily. He seizes assets from Zlochevsky, 4 homes, 2 plots of land, and a Rolls Royce. But a month later, Shokin is indeed fired. But here's the confirmation.
Yesterday, I meet with the General Prosecutor Shokin.
Yes.
And despite of the fact that we didn't have any corruption charges, we don't have any information about he doing something wrong, I especially asked him, no, it was the day before yesterday, I especially asked him to resign.
Great.
And this is my second step for keeping my promises.
I agree.
Wow. And the $1 billion of stalled aid was released that day. Burisma never again, in the 7 years that followed, has ever had a corruption investigation on them in 7 years. So what's even more troubling about all this is the FD 1023 form filed with the FBI. In this, an impeccable FBI source, who they describe as highly reliable and trusted, a source, in fact, that they'd been working with for over 10 years, and they had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to for his information, and it's always checked out. Well, this source reports that Zlochevsky personally called him in 2015 and bragged about having Hunter Biden on his board, and that Hunter Biden was personally going to help the corruption investigation go away. And Zlochevsky told this source that he paid Hunter Biden $5 million and he paid Joe Biden $5 million. In 2017, there's a WhatsApp message between Hunter Biden and another of his Chinese business associates, where Hunter claims to be sitting right next to his father. He said, "I'm right here next to my dad," and then badgers the man for money he purportedly promised to pay the Bidens. Hunter goes on to tell this Chinese counterpart that his father holds grudges and he will essentially blackball this guy and make his life a living hell unless he pays up. Also in 2017, the Biden family receives over $1 million from Rob Walker, who had in turn previously received a $3 million payment. It came in the form of a wire from a Chinese company. Hunter Biden created 20 shell companies and is one of the only people I've ever heard of that pocketed seed capital. That's odd. And as my grandmother used to say, that's peculiar. There's also been up to 170 SARs, which are suspicious activity reports. They're generated when financial institutions who have to, by law, they're required to do so when they suspect that there might be money laundering or fraud. Well, there were 170 generated by the Biden family business dealings. And the bank records and whistleblower testimony all points to 2 things that the Biden family provided to their foreign business associates: access and influence. Because what other services did they provide? Well, there weren't any. What goods did they sell? Nothing. And if Joe Biden has nothing to hide, then why not just come clean, Joe? Cooperate with the Oversight Committee investigation, release your bank records, and give us access to your phone's geolocations. And if there's nothing there, then, well, our investigation could end like that. But the Bidens are not doing that. They're, in fact, fighting us at every turn. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if you found that it's more likely than not that Joe Biden indeed did have knowledge of his son's illegal business dealings and was also an active participant in them, then it's our duty as members of Congress. In fact, it's our constitutional duty to further investigate this matter until the truth is uncovered and justice is served. And I can promise you that's exactly what we're going to do on the Oversight Committee. Joining me now is my good friend and great American Texas Congresswoman and member of the House Ways and Means Committee, Beth Van Dyne.
Hey, Pat, how are you doing this week?
Beth, I'm doing great. I wanted to just get your reaction to what we were just talking about, here in the monologue with the Biden family corruption.
I think he just laid out all reasons why he should have been indicted by now. And I think he laid out why Republicans have a duty to be able to start impeachment proceedings. He's fighting us on every step of the way to try to get to the answers that we need. There are, in addition to the information that you just presented, we also have whistleblower testimony that shows that this corruption goes back almost a decade at least. We're on the floor and we're looking at these policies that are coming out of this administration, and we shake our head and we're just wondering who's in charge, who is being served, because it's definitely not the American people. When you stop and think about it, Pat, we have a president who is demonizing American businesses, who is demonizing our energy industry, and who is it benefiting? China. We see what he's doing and not holding their feet to the fire because of COVID. Well, we see that we have a spy balloon and he doesn't even shoot it down before it goes over our military bases. You have to ask yourself, at the end of the day, who does Biden report to? Yeah. And is he compromised? Because if you look at his policies, everything would say yes. And then of all the information that you just set out, I mean, look, we need to get to the bottom of this, and enough is enough. This has been going on for decades, and it has got to stop.
Well, Beth, you worked in the Trump administration, and quite frankly, I've been following politics since I was a wee little lad because I was a nerdy political kid. And I can remember going back to Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter, the only president, Republican or Democrat, that has ever taken on China and acted boldly was President Trump.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And then you see how they have let everything that Joe Biden has done and Hunter Biden has done. And Joe saying that he has no ideas, never talked business. And then you've got a whistleblower with Devin Archer saying, yeah, he was on the call. He was on at least 20 different calls. And then you start following the money. Okay, where's that money going? It would seem as if the money that's coming into Hunter's account immediately goes into Joe's account, or they're sharing accounts. Money that is being paid for bills for Joe is being paid for by Hunter. So it's all one and the same. 10 different family members, 20 different shell companies, and almost $50 million that have come in from places like China. And look, the way that they're treating Trump, it's as if they want to criminalize thought. Is that really the precedent that they want to set? When you think about Hillary Clinton, she knew she was lying when for 4 years she kept saying that she won the election and that Trump was not her president. Lies. Obama, how many lies? You're going to be able to keep your doctor. Lies. Are we going to go back and are we going to prosecute them? Adam Schiff, when he kept pushing and pushing and pushing for more impeachment based on a fake Russian dossier, he knew it was fake. He continued to say it. Are we going to start prosecuting and indicting him? Because, man, you and I both know we've got our hands full if that is now the bar that's been set.
And Beth, too, in 2019, when you see Joe Biden constantly denying that he had any knowledge whatsoever of his son's business dealings, I mean, he was the one that built that firewall. And then to sit there and try to deny, counter accuse, which is an old, tactic of the left. And when was asked about why his son was taking money from China, then he said, "No, I never took money from China. I didn't." He on one hand, he says he doesn't know anything about his son's business dealings, but on the other hand, he says he didn't take money from China. If he didn't have anything, if he had no knowledge, how would he know whether or not he took any money?
Just be careful when they start accusing you of something, because it's something they've done. And this is all just a distraction technique. It's a shiny object. They are using and abusing Trump right now because they know that that's what the media is going to follow. And when you start looking at that timeline, and I know you set it out, you start looking at the timeline, every single time we've gotten closer to finding more information out that the media should be counting and asking, the next day, the very next day, not once, not twice, but 3 times, they have all of a sudden had accusations on Trump. Yeah. Don't look over here, concentrate on Trump.
Beth, you're exactly right. Listen, Congresswoman Beth Van Dyne, a woman so fine they named her 3 times. Beth, thank you so much. God bless.
Have a great day.
And let's bring in founder and president of Article 3, former law clerk to Justice Neil Gorsuch, Mike Davis. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me.
No, thanks for being on. So what do you think about everything that went down yesterday?
I mean, I think this is a continuation of Joe Biden's lawfare against Donald Trump, his political opponent, for 2020 and 2024. This started with Matthew Colangelo leaving the number 3 office in the Biden Justice Department and joining Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg to bring an unprecedented indictment against a former president for the non-crime of a businessman settling a nuisance claim. Now we have Jack Smith, Garland's handpicked special counsel, partisan pit bull going after Trump for the non-crime of a former president having his presidential records, which is allowed by the Presidential Records Act. Now they're making it even more crazy by indicting a former president for the non-crime of objecting to a presidential election, which is allowed by the Electoral Count Act of 1887 in the First Amendment. We are going down a very dangerous path here. We have a politicized and weaponized Justice Department, and this is republic-ending type of misconduct.
I mean, it's like a bad novel. It's something that it just doesn't seem, it's so surreal and it's so, stranger than fiction that it's happening. In fact, we're keeping track. Trump has 78 felony charges to his name now, and the Bidens, 0, none. That really astounds me. And this sounds, the sounds of Biden back in November, but this is truly gold. Take a listen to this.
We just have to demonstrate that he will not take power by, if he does run, making sure he, under legitimate efforts of our Constitution, does not become the next president again.
Wow. I mean, that thing left me speechless. I don't think Joe Biden really realized that he was revealing exactly their plan.
Yeah, so President Biden is clearly corrupt. He's clearly compromised as the president of the United States. And his Attorney General Merrick Garland is clearly covering for him while weaponizing the Justice Department to go after Biden's chief political rival. It's time for your colleagues in the House to open an impeachment inquiry on Joe Biden and Merrick Garland, because we need to expose this to the American people, and there need to be consequences. The reason that the Biden regime is getting away with this over the last year is because there are no consequences. This is a zero-sum game. When they're on offense, they're not on defense. It's time for House Republicans to put them on defense with impeachment and cutting off their funding.
Well, Mike Davis, I want to thank you very much, and God bless you, my friend.
Thank you.
Coming up, we've got more Biden corruption to talk about involving Hunter Biden's former business partner, and about this guy, the former prosecutor general of Ukraine. Stay with us.
You know who I am. You know who he is. You know his character. You know my character. You know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
80 million plus people voted for that guy? Come on, wow. We sure do know your character, Joe. And America is seeing more and more of it every single day. We've got former U.S. Attorney and Biden whistleblower Bud Cummings joining us now. Bud, thank you for coming on. This is clearly all a distraction. I mean, take a look at these graphics. We've got Hunter admitting that the laptop was his on March 18th. And what happens? President Trump gets indicted by Bragg up here in New York. And then the FBI releases documents alleging the Bidens took a $10 million bribe from Burisma and Zlochevsky on June 8th. The next day, Jack Smith indicts President Trump in the Mar-a-Lago case. And July 26th, Hunter appears in court and rejects his sweetheart plea deal gets rejected. On July 27th, Jack Smith strikes again and adds even more charges to the Mar-a-Lago case. And a recap of just this week, Devin Archer testifies on Monday, blockbuster testimony here. And on Tuesday, third indictment on President Trump comes down. And this can't be a coincidence. It seems like it's all ultimately an effort to cover up the Biden family corruption.
I agree with you. It's hard to believe that those are coincidences. And having worked at the Department of Justice, I can tell you that back when it was being run properly, those kind of things were talked about to avoid the appearance of impropriety by making sure you didn't accidentally time something around something political that someone could accuse you of being political. So they know what they're doing. It's in their manual, and they're doing it on purpose. The Department of Justice has been completely politicized, and our country, your previous guests are exactly right. It's a threat to our republic.
You know, Bud, when I was in the military, they taught us perception is reality. So it's good to see that when it was run properly, you all acknowledged that and made sure that there was no perceptions that people could, read into. You know, I want to show you these texts between Devon Archer and Hunter Biden. These just prove that power seems to be the only interest of the Biden family. Take a look. Said, Hunter, every great family is persecuted and prosecuted in the U.S., and you're part of a great family. That's another one is Bidens are different, and you're a Biden. It's the price of power, and people questioning you truly have none. It's kind of like one of those the limousine liberals and the patricians of Rome. The plebeians are to be tolerated only when they have to vote for us, and then we will do your bidding for you because you lessers don't know how to live your lives.
They have no shame. I mean, they've determined that there is literally no accountability. There's no consequence. They can continue to deny things that are right in our face, and they know that there's a dual standard of justice in this country, and they own it. Yeah. So we're in real trouble, and I don't know how anybody is supposed to take an indictment of Donald Trump seriously. In contrast to all this evidence that's been out there since, at least since I brought it to the DOJ's attention in 2018, and they've taken no action whatsoever. And because statute of limitations, it's almost impossible that they ever will.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 1984, 1 + 1 = 3. Now, take a look. I want to show you Devon Archer's transcript that they had dinners and phone calls with foreign nationals. Oversight Committee Chairman Jim Joyner asks, at the dinner at the Four Seasons, did Zlochevsky or Vadim ask Hunter Biden to make any calls? And Archer says, yeah, but I wasn't a party to the call. And they said, what was the request? Well, the request was to get, there was pressure. They were putting pressure on Hunter to see if they could help him because there was pressure on them by the Ukrainian government. And then Jordan asks Archer to confirm this quote that things were going on in Ukraine. And Jordan then asks what Hunter did. And after he was given that request, did he help them out? And listen, I didn't hear this phone call, Archer says, but he called his dad. And then later, Archer says that Hunter put his father on the speakerphone. Occasionally he's at dinner, and he was asked to talk about what he said. And he said, yeah, I remember a dinner in Paris with a French energy company. And Archer also said Biden was on a speakerphone during a dinner with Jonathan Lee in Beijing. So clearly, Joe Biden was involved in Hunter Biden's businesses.
Well, and remember, Devon Archer says that he knows about approximately 20 calls Joe Biden made, but he also made it clear he and Hunter were not together all the time, and they didn't work on all the same clients. So there's no telling how many times Hunter Biden put Joe Biden on the phone with his clients. This is beyond, if this were a state senator in Texas, they would have prosecuted the guy and put him in prison long ago. You got commingling of the funds. You've got the president, vice president at the time, affirmatively assisting his son in what is at a minimum a fraud. He was either defrauding these people that they were going to get some influence or they were getting some influence. Either way, it's criminal, and Joe Biden was right in the middle of it. He was assisting his son every step of the way. And we're not even talking about the serious income tax crimes that were committed, millions of dollars of tax evasion that was unprosecuted that we dealt with a couple of weeks ago. So the evidence is overwhelming. Lou Holtz once said, life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you respond to it. What's happened to us is our country's being taken over. They've weaponized some of the main agencies in our government, DOJ, CIA, State Department. The question is, what are we going to do about it? It's too late to prosecute these people. That's not going to happen. Congress can act, and we need to know the facts, and hopefully they will continue to whether they impeach somebody, they can impeach Merrick Garland, they can impeach Joe Biden. There's probably a handful of other people they should impeach. But the people need the facts, and then we have to pay attention to elections because if we don't win an election, we're going to lose our country.
Now, Bud, you're absolutely right. I want to thank you for coming on. You quoted my old coach, Lou Holtz, as well. He's indeed a great American. And as a former Texas state senator, I can tell you, if we didn't pay any income tax on $8.5 million, we'd be in the jug, just like Wesley Snipes was.
That's correct.
Yeah, but unbelievable. Bud, thanks so much again, and God bless.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You know, we've been talking about him tonight quite a bit. Victor Shokin, a great key player in the Biden family corruption. Newsmax national correspondent Logan Radek has more.
The mystery around Victor Shokin, the former prosecutor general of Ukraine, is beginning to clear up. Now, over the last few years, there have been competing theories that he was either a prosecutor fighting corruption or he himself was corrupt. But according to the transcript from Devin Archer's interview with the House Oversight Committee on Monday, Burisma Holdings founder and president Mykola Zlochevsky paid Hunter Biden millions of dollars to sit on the board and asked the then vice president's son to, quote, help him relieve pressure from Ukraine's prosecutor general through his contacts in D.C. James Mandolfo, the general counsel for the Oversight Committee, asked Archer, quote, what did Hunter Biden do after he was given that request? Archer replied, quote, I did not hear this phone call, but he called his dad. Then Vice President Joe Biden held up $1 billion in International Monetary Fund loan guarantees unless Shokin was fired. And sure enough, he was. After leaving office, Biden bragged about this to the Council on Foreign Relations in January of 2018.
And I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired.
Now, President Biden has continued to deny any contacts with his son regarding his foreign business dealings, but President Biden has yet to comment on Devin Archer's testimony, which happened Monday, as he's been on vacation in Delaware ever since. Pat.
Well, thank you, Logan. I appreciate that. And, you know, it's absolutely mind-boggling. I just hope more Americans open up their eyes to this. Now, moving on to the border. Governor Abbott's newest strategy to keep illegal migrants from crossing the Rio Grande doesn't seem to be going as planned. We'll talk more about this after the break. New data for July shows that illegal migrant crossings increased by 30%. Now, are we surprised by this? Take a listen to DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who is running the whole thing, and claimed just the opposite in a hearing this last week.
Our approach to managing the borders securely and humanely, even within our fundamentally broken immigration system, is working.
That's astounding to me that Mayorkas would testify in front of Congress that it's working. You know, he was supposed to, according to the 2006 Secure Fence Act, a federal law that requires the Secretary of Homeland Security to maintain operational control of the southern border. He's clearly not done that. He's not fit for service, and he should be impeached forthwith. But don't worry, we've got a border czar. So let's check in on what our border czar is up to.
That's what we're talking about.
Wow. Well, our open border isn't a laughing matter, and we've got serious things that we want to talk about. And we have our panel. We have one of the best sheriffs in the country, Tracy Murphy of Denton County, Texas, and a senior law enforcement analyst and former Customs and Border Patrol Commissioner, Mark Morgan, also a great American, and they both join us now. Sheriff, these illegal crossings increased in the month of July. Tell us in Texas what the heck's going on.
It's total chaos. It's, we have Governor Abbott doing his very best to try to use state resources to do a job where the federal government has failed us. And it's our border towns are being invaded. I'm 400 miles away from the border. I see it every day. 10% of my jail population is illegal aliens from offenses from DWI to sexual assault of a child to homicide. It's out of control, Pat. And I just had a visit with a lot of sheriffs on the border at a conference last week, and these guys are overrun. They're overworked.
Well, Sheriff, what you just said there a minute ago, though, you said if, let's just say in a perfect world, we didn't have any illegal migration, you're saying that crime in Denton County, Texas would immediately drop by 10%.
Well, yeah, those are the ones we've caught.
Right.
So yeah.
At least 10%.
At least 10%. And, not to mention that I think one of the biggest problems we see is illegal alien on illegal alien crime, and those crimes aren't even being reported because these folks are scared to come to us. They're scared to. So you're talking, yeah, on the books 10%. In reality, it'd be a drastic drop in violent crime in my county.
And Mark, Governor Abbott planned to construct floating barriers in the Rio Grande to prevent more crossings. We have video here showing these illegal migrants just going around them. What's the alternative plan?
There is no alternative plan. His plan is right, Pat. He just needs to build more of it. We need more infrastructure. Look, the tried and true multi-layered strategy that the Border Patrol has been using since the 1980s is a combination of infrastructure, technology, and personnel. And that's what we need to get to all along all 2,000 miles of our southwest border. Anywhere where you have that multi-layer strategy of infrastructure, whether it's a physical wall or the water wall, along with personnel and technology, you're going to be able to dictate and change the behavior of the cartels rather than cartels dictating our behavior to react to their actions. That wall-to-wall is working. They just need more of it, just like we need more technology, just like we need more infrastructure and personnel. And again, along with that, Pat, and you know this very well because you're part of passing H.R. 2, with the resources, we also need Congress to pass meaningful legislation that will back up that resources with policy.
Well, actually, maybe enforcing the laws that are already on the books. And
Good
maybe
start.
also
That's
having
a good start.
Mark and Sheriff having some will to actually secure the border and protect Americans, because that's our most sacrosanct duty. I mean, So Mark, are you really saying that walls work? They certainly do. If it's Nancy Pelosi's house or Joe Biden's beach house or Chuck Schumer's mansion up in New York, they work. But to your point, they need to be long enough. If it's just segmented or Swiss cheese, it's not going to work. But as a whole, and as a comprehensive strategy, it does. You know, Sheriff, one of the things that struck me was we hadn't had a month in our history of over 200,000 illegal border crossings. It had never happened before. But under Joe Biden, it happened for 10 months in a row and 13 times total. And now they're even counting things differently because they have the CBP-1 app, you know, and then they don't count those folks and they say they're illegal crossing. And the other thing is, look at the left's language. They used to be illegal immigrants, and then they become undocumented workers, and now they're all magically asylum seekers. When we know that 99% of the folks that are crossing the border are economic migrants, and they're not truly asylum seekers, but that's what the left, they play this game because they truly want open borders. And it's horrifying. Sheriff, what do your counterparts that are closer to the border, because we know how bad it is really across the country, because Joe Biden has made every state a border state, and we're 400 miles from it when we're in Denton County. But what are the border sheriffs saying? How disastrous is it for them?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that most of those counties down there are rural counties, and they're small counties. So you're talking sheriffs with very limited resources. You're talking, sheriffs with small departments. And I have a fairly big sheriff's office here in Denton County, but it would overwhelm us if we were down there. And one of the things, they've asked for help, and they've asked for other sheriffs to send help. And one of the other things that hurts us on that is our inability to hire people in law enforcement, and the workforce problem that we're having, that we're just, it's kind of a perfect storm. We're unable to get the people we need to get down there to help those folks, where the federal government has failed us.
You know what would really help secure our border? Not only to have the will and a different president in office, maybe President Donald Trump again, who actually tried to secure the border, but more great Americans like Sheriff Tracy Murphy and Mark Morgan. Thank y'all. I wish we could clone you, because we'd have that border secure in about a week.
Absolutely.
Week, thanks, guys. This week we had an indictment. Indictment number 3 fall on President Trump's lap. But that's not stopping him at all. He's still leading in the polls in the 2024 election. We'll talk about that next. This just in. We have breaking news. President Donald Trump has been indicted for a 4th time. This one for jaywalking in New York City in 1974. I mean, come on, Alvin Bragg. You know the statute of limitations must have run out by now. Up. We have another indictment, President Trump. He was chewing gum in Singapore in a recent visit. Oh, and hold on, there's another indictment. President Trump failed to say Gesundheit when somebody next to him sneezed on his plane. Folks, this is the theater of the absurd. Let's welcome in political analyst Mark Halperin. Mark, as they say in Boston, you're wicked smart. Thanks for joining us. and thanks for coming on tonight. Mark, former President Trump spoke just about an hour ago at a dinner in Alabama, a Republican summer dinner. I want to play a little bit of it so you can hear it. And he is slamming Biden's corrupt Justice Department and the interesting timing of all these indictments. Here, watch this.
Put America first. In response, our enemies unleashed an army of rabid left-wing lawyers, corrupt Marxist prosecutors. These are dishonest people, bad people, deranged government agents and rogue intelligence officers to try and stop our movement. Remember the 51 intelligence officials that lied about the laptop? They said, oh, the laptop, Russia disinformation. No, they all lied. 51 of them lied. As an example, every one of these many fake charges filed against me by the corrupt Biden DOJ could have been filed 2.5 years ago. They didn't want to do it 2.5 years ago. They wanted to wait, and they did wait. They waited right to the middle of an election, and they waited until I became the dominant force in the polls, because we're dominating everybody, including Biden, in the polls.
Mark, what do you think of President Trump's reaction?
Well, Congressman, first of all, very nice to be on with you. Thank you for those kind words. I know you're a charter member of the House caucus on guest hosting Newsmax programs, so really pleasure to be with you. Look, Alabama, of course, is special residence. You saw it tonight, President Trump in his element. That state is where his rallies began 8 years ago. And I think you see with his remarks there and the new ad the campaign's planning to put on the air pretty soon, they're going right at the prosecutors. And the conventional wisdom that the indictments help him win the nomination and hurt him in the general election may turn out not just to be sort of wrong, but 180 degrees wrong. And I think you're going to see him drive this message straight through, if he's the nominee, straight through the election.
And Mark, I mean, seriously, this is the third indictment. There might be one coming from Georgia. With all these indictments, after every one, doesn't it water down the previous ones?
Well, I think history is going to record, if these indictments don't stop him from returning to the White House, history is going to record that Alvin Bragg really messed up whatever Democratic plan there was, because that first indictment was seen as weak even by a lot of Democrats. And now you've seen a series of indictments. And as you said, for many Americans, it's not just absurd, it's unfair. And those are the people who are rallying around Donald Trump. Democrats I talk to, they can't fathom this. They say, how could anyone support this man? But for those who see this as an unfair two-tier system of justice, these indictments, again, with the Trump playbook, they strengthen him, certainly in the short term. And as I said before, maybe even straight through the general election.
Yeah, and I think it rallies, the folks that are right of center, because they think it is two-tier justice has been very unfair. Mark Halperin, thank you for being so wicked smart and spending some time with us. Now, coming up.
Good to see you, Congressman.
Thanks, Mark. President Biden on vacation in Delaware as the investigation into his son's overseas business dealings ramps up. We dive into that next. Welcome back. It was a busy week in Washington, but President Biden spent the week on vacation in Delaware, riding his bike, hopefully not falling off again, and hanging out on the beach. For more on this, let's bring in former California Congressman, my good friend and great American, and the CEO of the Trump Media and Technology Group, Devin Nunes. Former President Trump faced his third indictment this week, and the fourth is probably on the horizon, but he's still way ahead in the polls. How do you explain his unwavering appeal to so many Americans?
Well, Pat, it's great to see that you have life after politics. Maybe this is a good opportunity for you. It's great to be with you this evening, and of course, Newsmax. Look, President Trump is resilient. No one in modern history, I don't know anyone who could take the abuse by one's own government that President Trump has. And he's really exposing all of this. And it started when he came down the escalator in 2015, and it never stopped. As you know, you were there during the Russia hoax. But you have to really go back and you have to look at Obama's involvement in this, because it really goes back to when they weaponized intelligence during the Iraq War, when Obama said, oh, ISIS is on the run. Al-Qaeda, bin Laden is dead. ISIS is on the run. Al-Qaeda is on the run. It's all done with. It was a lie. They got a lot of people killed. Same thing happened when they used the IRS to target conservatives in the Tea Party movement. People may remember that. Then you fast forward to Russia, the Russia hoax and the Ukraine impeachment hoax and all the other things that are going on. Well, now if you think it can't get worse, it can, because these guys in Washington have taken an unprecedented step of fully weaponizing the Department of Justice against our own citizens and against the leading candidate for the opposition party. It can't be said enough. It's banana republic time.
Yeah.
And, I think, and look, you're in Congress now, and, the advice, I was there last week, and the advice that I gave to the members of Congress is, look, yes, we know that the Hunter Biden, Joe Biden deal, we know that Joe Biden, under any circumstances, is the biggest political scandal, corruption scandal in history. We know that. You guys have uncovered that. But what's bigger is the involvement of the DOJ and the FBI. And I think what you have to do is look at the DOJ, look at the FBI, build from there and figure out how the hell has this happened? Because it really looks like the Biden regime has people, and the Biden-Obama regime have people within the DOJ and the FBI that are covering this up and have covered this up. So you don't just want to get Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. You really want to get the crooks that are in the DOJ and the FBI that, unfortunately, we know who a lot of them are because of Durham, but sadly, Bill Barr and I don't know who else didn't let Durham actually go after the dirty cops.
Well, Devin, you're right in so much as that there's a corruption issue and an element to this, but there's also a cover-up issue as well. And I don't want my military to be Democrats and Republicans. I want them to be Americans. I don't want my federal justice system to be Democrats and Republicans. I want them to be objective and just Americans. And you made some great points. I wish you the best, and thanks for doing such a great job in Congress and for President Trump now. We'll be right back. Thanks, Devin. Well, folks, thanks so much again for joining us. And here's a novel idea. Let's just do what's in America's best interest and putting America first. And if you're watching Newsmax, you're doing just that. Thank you so much. God bless, and have a wonderful weekend.